Hello everyone and welcome back to the next episode of the Road to the Master series, in which I will cover the round number 8 from the Kielce Chess Open, in which I got paired with a student of mine. We are not working on the daily or weekly basis, however on the several occasions we worked together for the mostly opening repertoire, and as you can tell, it might benefit me because I now know what my opponent plays with both colors against everything basically. But it put me in the tough spot. I am curious what you guys will think about it, because in the end chess is like a war. So the more you know about the opponent, the better for you. You might win the war. However, not only I am a warrior when I play the game, I am also a coach, right? So in order to win this game, should I, let's say, use my opponent's weaknesses that I know of, or should I rather avoid them and try to play normal game of chess as if I did not know my guy? So this is the dilemma I faced. I'm curious what is your standpoint on this. And I have decided to go away from the most obvious, let's say, opening weaknesses that my opponent had, which I knew of. And I decided to go for the d4 move, because after e4 I would have some tricks. After d4 I would rather say, okay, let's just play a game, have fun. As a coach and a student, we'll see where it goes. After d4 he replied with d5, c4, e6, somewhat expected, knight c3, knight f6. This was actually not so expected. I gave him some variations as black, and this was not the move that I gave him, so he kind of surprised me, but I was also happy with it because, as I've said, at least we'll have a game without having to know the weaknesses of each other. We just can play some chess. After knight f6 I took, bishop g5, so the most natural queen's gambit declined there exists. However, at this point my opponent played knight b to d7 with a very tricky but easy trick. Obviously, as you can tell, the d file is as of now closed, so knight takes d5 might be tempting, but black is winning in here. He can take the knight, and after I take his queen, after bishop before my king is stuck, therefore I have to give up my queen, and all in all, in the end my bishop is taken and I am without a piece. So it was a funny little trick that my student tried to play against me, and I said to myself, okay, do you want to play for some tricks? Let's do it. I decided to go with e3, natural way of playing, c6, bishop d3, bishop e7, natural stuff, queen c2, castle. In here, white has a critical choice of developing the knight either to e2 or f3. I decided to go to e2, making things a little bit more complex, I would say, and I wanted to play such game against this specific player. On top of that, as I've said, I wanted to play some tricks with him since he wanted to do some trick to me, and I've spotted that in general rook e8 and knight e4 is a desired, let's say, setup and move order, an idea for the opponent. However, in order to do that, after rook e8 castle, he cannot really play knight e4 as of now yet, because I can, for example, take in here, and if he takes on g5, I have bishop takes h7 with a check. So I am claiming a pawn advantage. So for him, in order to have this knight e4 stuff, he would have to have h6 on the board so that the pawn is no longer hanging. And if I go to h4, maybe now knight e4 makes more sense. But after h6, I knew that I would rather go to f4, with the idea that in general in those situations, if I will manage to play a3 on time and then, let's say, hide my bishop before any knights, any bishops of the opponent trying to exchange it, I would be more than happy. And on top of that, there is a trick that I was hoping for, and which my opponent fell into. Already as of move 11, he was so, let's say, tempted to get my bishop. He started with h6, he continued with knight h5, but as of now I am getting basically a winning position. I will give you a few seconds to spot the trick, but the idea was that thankfully, like just a few days back, I saw some game when I was, walking through the playing hall, and I spotted that in such situations, circumstances, the queen is out of moves basically, and after my knight takes d5, I'm winning the material, because if my opponent accepts the knight, I have bishop c7, amazing stuff, queen is stuck, it is mine. So for that exact reason, after knight d5, I am getting a pawn because obviously my opponent will not take the knight. He would rather play something else, and he decided to take on f4, leaving me no choice but to take on e7 with a check. And after queen e7, knight f4, I just got myself a pawn advantage, central pawn. So it's not the question of if I will win the game, but rather when I will win it. So pretty good stuff. On top of that, I will say that unfortunately during this round and the last one, the air conditioning went off on the playing hall, so it was extremely tough to play with, I believe, over 30 degrees on the playing hall for so many hours. So I was very thankful that my opponent have blundered so early during the game, so that okay, I knew that if I will sit a specific amount of time, like 2 hours, maybe three, I will still win anyway, hopefully, right? So yeah, this was motivating me, let's say, to sit out through the tough time in terms of the temperature. But putting that aside, as you can tell, chess-wise, I am more than happy. So my opponent started with knight f6. At this point, you know, we were both trying to just play out some moves. I decided to start with a3, maybe not the most dangerous looking move. I wanted to take away the b4 square from the queen, maybe prepare b4 also and attempt some minority attack to create some weakness on c6. I didn't know what to do yet, and also I wanted to wait a little bit for my opponent. Where does he want to develop his bishop and his pieces and all that. Also, I was willing to play knight e2 as an attempt to remaneuver it to c3 and help with e4, and if I chose such move immediately, knight d5 with knight b4 might be incoming. Whether or not this exchange would be good for me or not, I mean, it's debatable, but I just didn't want to have any, let's say, dilemmas. I wanted to play simple chess. So a3 it is, bishop e6, rook to open, semi-open file, let's say, rook a to d8, rook a to d1, knight d5, and in here I believe I've spent a lot of time trying to figure out what is the best advantage for me when I want to win the game. So I can take the bishop, I can take the knight, or as previously planned, I can just simply try to drop back the knight to e2. Knight e2 did not seem so great in here as of now, since in order to push e4 later on, I would still perhaps have to play to c3, therefore allowing once more the trade. So if I wanted to trade, why not doing that already as of now? After knight d5, I was unsure what happens after cd. Yes, I have a pawn advantage, but it would be perhaps a lot of time until I would be really able to show that I have one more pawn, because the position is somewhat, let's say, symmetrical. And on top of that, maybe some even bishop takes d5 might be tempting, because my opponent might attempt some blockade along the, let's say, light squares. And if I push e4 as of now, the d4 pawn is maybe not protected yet enough, and so on, so on. So I decided to, in the end, take on e6, deciding that perhaps this knight, yes, it's active, it's centralized, but at the same time, as long as I keep the control over the dark squares, it has nowhere to go. And then with my bishop, I should be having some fun along the open light squares. So I decided, okay, let's do just that. After queen e6, I played yet another calm looking move, h3, waiting for my opponent, what is he willing to do, because in general e4 is the move that is the most tempting one for me. But after knight f4, this is the exact reason why I didn't want to play it so far. f4 square is given away, and for example after bishop f1, I was not sure if I would be really willing to play such position in which I am pressured to both pawns, to the checkmate, some knight a3 incoming. So if it works tactically, I mean, okay, sure, I'm winning. But strategically, do I want to put myself in such a uncomfortable situation? I'm not so sure. So instead I chose h3. I said to myself, okay, this move will be somewhat, let's say, a good addition overall in general, and I will wait what my opponent will want to do, because if he plays knight f6, then the knight would not be able to go to f4, so I might play e4. And that's exactly what happened. He played knight f6, I gave a bishop c4 intermediate move, let's say, and after queen d6, I pushed e4. And the difference is that instead of having this annoying knight on f4, annoying queen on g6, hitting all my vulnerable spots, as of now, I am not that easily hit, and I can continue pushing, because my idea overall for winning can be like very different. Let's say, for example, I can, as I've said in the beginning, play b4, try to push to b5, maneuver the rooks in here, try to create some queenside activity, and win, let's say, more of a strategic way. At the same time though, I felt like, okay, this is tempting, but maybe it's a little bit too slow. I'm also not sure about it. I decided to take the game into the more direct route, which was bishop c4, e4, the fork is there, so queen f4 it is, e5, and as of now I developed I pushed my pawn to e5. Yes, this pawn is weaker, but at the same time this pawn guarantees myself a lot of space. I believe that black pieces has lost a little bit of connectivity too. And on top of that, since the pawn is pushed, now the third rank has opened, so I might be able to, reroute my rooks either one through the third rank in order to create some kingside activities. As I can tell, it was the choice of either queenside or kingside. I went for the kingside one. At this point though, since my pawn is not so great, I would like to really kick out this queen, and I started with g3. And there are only two squares available, f3 or g5. After f3, initially I was more than happy because I wanted to play bishop e2 and the queen is stuck. But there is a trick, knight e3 move. What's the idea? If I accept the knight, then there is a perpetual check. If I will take the queen, my queen is taken too, and I cannot not take either of the pieces because queen g2 is in the air, let's say. So after bishop f3, knight c2, the other thing that is not so great for me is that my rook is hit, my pawn is hit. So in order to not lose the game, I would have to play rook e4, and then it was the question of, is this knight a good one, hitting my pawn and creating some pressure? Or is this knight a bad one because it has nowhere to go and I can, grab it in a short time? So this was something that I have not decided yet during the game, and apparently my opponent can try some moves like f5. If I take en passant, he can then exchange, take this pawn. The position is really unclear whether or not it's winning, because after this move I cannot take really in here because of knight e2 trick. So all in all, plenty of tactical tricks, and for that reason after g3 I was initially happy, but then I would have to perhaps recalculate, reevaluate the situation. And if I remember correctly, I wanted to play bishop f1 because in the end, when I saw queen f3 coming on the opponent's move, I started calculating straight away what to do against it. However, my opponent was having none of that. He decided to go simply to g5, and after the game he said that he was unsure about this knight on c2, so he saw the line but was not so excited for it as I was, so maybe that was a good thing for me. And after queen g5 though, my play is much easier because I can solidify my pawn chain on the dark squares. h4, rook e4 with a tempo, rook e1, so I am going away from the d file as fast as possible so that I will not be under any pins whatsoever in the future. The pawn is still weak, but I am protecting it, and I am willing to, shortly, move by move by move by move, cooperate and operate on the king side, creating some threats. After rook e6, I played queen e2, rook e7 was played, so I felt like my opponent is really just waiting for the execution. Maybe there was some plan behind it, but I didn't understand it quite frankly. After rook e7, I played bishop d3. Maybe rook e6 was just an inaccuracy. Then my opponent have spotted that, okay, bishop d3 is incoming, so he had to make space for the queen. I don't know, but maybe it was the truth because he now played queen e6, after which I still maintained the control over the light squares. It was the debate between queen f3 or queen h5 or maybe rook g4 for me. In the end, I didn't like rook g4 for some specific reason. I don't remember what exactly, so I chose queen f3 with the hopes of then playing rook g4 and having some bishop f5 possibilities, trying to catch opponent's queen. But my opponent went for rook e to d7. And you might say, okay, it's even better because now after rook g4, bishop f5 comes with the attack to the rook too. But after knight e7, he covers this, and this double stack attacks my pawn. So I was unsure if I am, let's say, willing to play a move like this. Yes, I would be inviting yet another piece into the attack, having control over the pawn, but is it like too much? I have so many pieces on so little, let's say, space. I was not sure if this is well coordinated or badly coordinated. So all in all, I decided that after rook e to d7, I will play bishop c2 move, so that if the knight jumps somewhere, I have bishop b3 possibility because the queen protects the b3 square, and I was very, very proud of such move that I found. My opponent opted for knight b6. I believe that some other choices like knight e7 would be saying, okay, I want to bring the knight into the defense, but he was saying more like, okay, you play bishop b3, I go back, and what are you going to do about it? But in here I don't have to drop back the bishop again and repeat the moves. I can try to use this tempo to make something important for me, and I did just that. I played h5 move, which I believe is a very important one in terms of my attack. In general, I was a little bit worried about knight c4 move, even though it seems strange, because after queen c3, trying to solidify the pawn and attack the knight, b5 would be incoming, and I was really unsure if that rook endgame is winning for me, because like why would it be? After rook c1 takes, I am not even having a pawn advantage, and obviously I can take here, but then this rook can get some activity through the d file, so I was unsure. Yes, I have one more pawn, but as I told you in the previous analysis, guys, don't get fooled by the evaluation of the engine. Still, the eval bar has not dropped. Maybe it's even better than it was in the middle game, but practically speaking, I'm not sure if that's easily winning. For those reasons, I was happy to see this knight d5, allowing me to play h5. My opponent now went for rook e7. Now I dropped back the bishop because after knight goes like anywhere, there is no double stack anymore, so I'm happy with that. I can continue my attack overall. And he now chose rook c7, and yet again, he just, we're dancing around with the rook. And even though it seems clear that c5 is incoming as of now as his idea, I was unsure if it's a good one. So I just continued with rook g4 and queen e4. This was my idea overall, right? And I didn't even like find any move for my opponent. I am simply playing queen h7. What's the point of all that? However, what's interesting is that obviously, okay, en passant, I have to include it, right? At this point, I will not be happy with taking that way because then knight f6 is incoming at the end of the variation. So I will be simply taking on f5, and that is basically that. After here I have 2 pawns advantage. I can take the pawn immediately or give a check in between and then take it, try to exploit the pin. So in here I am winning easily. That was clear. But my opponent played king f8, which I didn't really expect, but if you think about it, it's the only really choice to continue fighting. And he was in a big time trouble. I was in a little bit of time trouble, still 5 moves to go, let's say, and I had to figure out what to do, and I miscalculated and I misevaluated the positions that will occur on the board. Apparently, computer says, okay, let's just have some fun and sacrifice the rook, because after takes, there is bishop f5 move as of now, and the queen kind of has no good squares to go to, because if he goes to e7, there is a checkmate, right? Plenty of squares on the 6th rank are taken, so if he goes to like, I don't know, c6, I have e6 incoming, trying to open up the king's position completely, and after he takes, I give a check, and then I give a check, like all this computer line giving checkmate in like 12 moves altogether. So obviously rook d7 was out of question, and if you exclude that move, it's not that easy for white to continue pushing. So in here I decided that okay, I've calculated some line, I can take on c5 to just get rid of all the pressure in the world, and after rook c5 play bishop b3, so that I will be able to play queen h7 anyway, but I will just not face any difficulties with either the pressure to the pawn or to the hanging bishop, and so on. And my opponent found very good move in here, queen b6, hitting my bishop, hitting my pawn, and also looking at the f2 square, so plenty of opportunities for him. In here I've played what is looking like the most logical way of playing, which is bishop d5, and as you can tell, eval bar is dropping. Why is that? Well, once more, my position is winning if I will spot those ideas of sacrificing pieces. Thankfully, as of now, I don't have to sacrifice the rook. I should do so with the bishop, so I should just not care about it, give it away, because after I can take, there is once more this e6 move, opening up the king completely, and computer sees some checkmates and all that on the way. From the human standpoint, it was easier to just take on d5 and then play queen h7 and go into the heavy pieces endgame with material advantage and a weak king. The problem is that this is counterintuitive, but with the bishop advantage, My opponent did not have any dynamic counterplay. He just had the material, the bishop in his hands, but it was of no use, therefore my initiative was worth more than that. If I will exchange on d5 and play queen h7, the problem is that his material situation will be a bad one. I will take the pawn advantage and so on, but his dynamic counterplay will be bigger. Because initially I thought that only rook d2 is a tempting choice for him, hitting here and there, but I can simply take the pawn, play here, protect f2, attack f7, easily winning position. But then rook d1 came onto the board, which I saw, but after I, chose to take on d5. And the problem is that if I now take, if he plays king e7, I might be having some problems. I will just show you the variations. Here, there are all kinds of checkmates incoming because of the open file. And if I go to h2, there is the weakness on f2. So I was not on time to deliver any, let's say, support to f2 pawn on the way. So rook d1 is completely out of question. And if so, like, how can I really protect myself? Should I play a move like this and, allow him to do anything, something like that? Maybe, but then I have a passive rook. He can take this pawn. I mean, he protects there. So materially speaking, I'm still fine. Humanly speaking, am I still easily winning? I am not so sure. So after king e7, the other way to go about the situation would be to play queen f6, which I saw, and takes, king g2. Yes, I have one more pawn, but once more the question is it easily winning for me? Thankfully, on the move 40, the last move before time control in the time trouble, my opponent was, I guess, kind of scared of going onto the dark square, which is understandable. But he went to e8, allowing me to have those queen f6 ideas if needed in the much better version. And on top of that, after rook e4 as of now, if it attempts, let's say, this, and that, in the end, as I've said, I have this queen f6 idea. And the difference is that as of now, I am protecting this. I am suggesting a trade, and if my opponent will not try to trade and play a move like this, yes, I am pinned, but all the e6 ideas are in the air. So my king is a little bit safer than his. And if after rook e4 he plays rook to d2, attempting to attack already as of now, it makes no difference. I can still play queen f6, hoping for those exchanges to happen, because if they happen as of now, king f8 is asking for some trouble, right? Checkmate in one. King d8 goes away from the f7 pawn so that I can try to exchange, go there, and then try to hit all of those pawns. So this would be the idea. After queen f6, then he had to take on e1 first and then take on b2. So once more entering those variations in which yes, my queen is pinned, but yes, e6 is incoming and creating some danger. At this point, even though I have one more pawn and a better king, it's still unclear. Is it easily winning for me? Yes, I have like +6, but the problem with heavy pieces endgame is that the pieces are so powerful, especially the queen, and naturally speaking, that it's always not so easy to both attack and both defend, right? It's logical, but I found this queen f5 tricky move attempt so that I still have an eye on this pawn. I am protecting it. I'm protecting this one, but at the same time I might be threatening with e6. I'm hitting this pawn, but at the same time I am willing to start checking from the side of the board. Also, I am, having this rook b1 possibilities, trying to enter the game with my rook. So all in all, I found this move as a multifunctional and the best. I've spent some time on it because we were after the time control, but as you can tell from the +6, I went down to like +3. Why? I don't know. You should ask Stockfish. Anyway, I somewhat expected that queen c2 will be on the board because opponent usually would be and should be happy about the rook endgame, because in here he has some counterplay on the queen side with 2 against 1. So obviously I have to avoid this situation, but after queen c2 I prepared queen f3. And you may ask, okay, why didn't you play queen f3 immediately? My idea was to try to take the queen out of the b2 square so that on c2 it no longer protects the b7 pawn, it no longer attacks the a3, the e5 pawns, and on top of that, f3 specifically was the square I wanted to go to because there is no rook d1 with the attempt to go into the queen's endgame because I control the square, so there are no exchanges whatsoever on the board. And at the very end, the point of the whole variation, because as you can tell, there are plenty of tricks with those queens on the board. After queen c6, with yet another attempt to exchange the queens, with attempt to, hold on to all the weaknesses, I have queen e3, hitting there and there. And as of now, opponent has no way to protect everything. However, the question is, do I really want to take on a7? After rook c2, I was thinking about it, because after this move, there is rook c1 incoming. Once more, not easily, should be winning position, but after the rook trade, my king is not so safe, maybe some perpetuals will be coming on and so on. But thankfully, I found another way that I was hoping for the long time, but in here specifically it works very well, and it is e6. I'm very proud of this move, and the idea behind it is that if my opponent takes, first of all, I've calculated the rook endgame, which in here should be winning because of the fact that I am grabbing this additional pawn, and on top of that, opponent has difficulties with playing with the king, because if he goes there, I take, he cannot easily go after my pawn because I will take his 2. So in order to create some counterplay, he would have to play like king g7 move, stopping me from checking, but then I have rook d6, trying to hit him there, and if at any point he will just attempt passive approach, I, have 3 more pawns, I'm winning easily. So with that, after this check, he would rather have to go to d7, but then I have rook h6, and if he goes after my pawn, I can simply just go to h8, allow my pawn to be taken, and at this point I am okay because I can play simply rook b8, takes, and that's that. I'm winning the rook, I'm winning the game, and this is something I've calculated till the end, so I was happy about it. And on top of that, even though my opponent gave me such choice, because he took, with a pawn and I can play for this variation, I saw that I don't have to exchange queens. I can basically maintain all the pressure with the queens on the board if I take on h6 first, and then only threaten with rook e6. So for him, the best way to go about the position would be to take with the queen, forcing the queen trade, but as I've said, rook endgame was winning. If he does not do that, I can simply take on h6. This pawn is attacked, he has to somewhat protect it, and the only way to do so is with the king. Rook c1 is not working because remember guys, the queen is still looking there, and after king d7 I have calculated everything till the end before playing e6, so I gave a check on h7, not g7. You will see in a second why. King went up the board, if it go down I will give a check and start pushing the pawn, and it should be easily winning. So he goes up and I have rook d1 check, and the reason for playing there instead of g7 was that if king tries to escape to the queen side, I can simply take the rook. And if he goes there, even though I have checkmate in here in 3 moves, I did not go for it because I have calculated everything till the end from this previous point onwards, and I didn't want to change anything. So instead of giving a check, and then checkmate, let's say, I went for f4 check, because I've spotted that all the squares are taken, so the king has to go back, and after king f6 I have queen g6, forcing him to go there, and after queen d7, king e8, queen g8, king e7, I have queen d8, king f7, rook d7, and the idea is that this amazing pawn takes away g6 square, so that all the squares are taken from the king, and opponent has to give away the queen for the rook. And this is something I've calculated like 10 moves ahead when playing e6. I couldn't calculate mate in 3. But anyway, the position is obviously won. My opponent resigned as of now. So yeah, was it the cleanest win of all time? I doubt it really, because I got the pawn advantage on the move like, what was it, 11, 12? Yeah, already on the move number 11 my opponent blundered. So to win after nearly 60 moves with some problems on the way, I would not say this is the cleanest way. However, I felt like I was, constructing the middle game well enough, and I cannot be so mad at myself about this one. So yeah, I will happily take the win, especially in those tough no air conditioning conditions, right? And 3 wins in a row against younger guys. I mean, I am kind of a grandpa of chess, even at my young age. So to show some tricks to the youngsters, it still feels nice. Thank you for the video. Hope to see you tomorrow on the analysis of the last round and the summary of the whole tournament. Hope to see you there. Thank you very much for this one. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like. The trick at the beginning was very funny. And yeah, let me know how would you approach this situation when playing against your own student. And with that, I will leave you here. Thank you for watching yet again. Bye bye.